like,
Yeah, I'd be willing to,
you know,
Ted
did not
when it comes down to it,
appreciate
you're
a 24-hour.
you know, then you bring it to Ray.
Yeah, I brought.
And I had.
Before.
It was like we're stopping.
We're okay with it? The milk
Anchorage.
run or something?
Yep, for like 12
Absolutely.
hours. And then we stopped in Ketchikan, but we actually got a hotel overnight in Ketchikan, and it was all on the same flight.
Did you talk about mountain?
But something you might be.
Do you travel 24 hours? How about driving or flying? Make sure you put some trash.
Yeah, I like the idea.
Well, I like Ketchikan.
Oh, it's not, it reminds me,
Encourage my kids to try any
like
of
the
that stuff.
waterfront there.
Yeah, but
Many
it's
bears,
small.
Yeah.
We're younger than.
But the thing that's amazing to me is there is no real roads to get to their capital even.
No,
You need,
That's
especially when some.
You have to either fly in or take a boat,
Look at.
Juneau.
Address.
And just about every other community that's is like.
oh, that way.
If you could find that address, it'll help a lot too.
If it was at a pharmacy,
No, it's
Oh, they already was.
leaving
Yeah, but we're
Sunrise
trying to figure out what happened.
going in. I told her,
But again, just.
I tell you, you gotta be really nice to her.
Yeah, thanks.
why do I have to be nice to her? She needs to be nice to me.
Fine.
Back at all.
Oh, she's actually a pretty good gal.
She's maybe saw her at the
Look.
Christmas concert at Parkway, and her little one just kind of kept reaching up, and I'm like, oh, that's okay. And I didn't realize who she was until I turned around. And the baby just kind of came that with me, then cuddled up with Ted, and I was laughing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we like,
Kids up there.
I enjoy
Canada time. Their game today.
word.
You met this? Oh, really?
Oh, you
You're never gonna lose that.
probably wouldn't want to be up there in the middle of winter though.
I mean, it would be one of those things where you're like, want to go and see
Oh,
and be
well,
okay, like.
yeah, that met's not too strong there.
No.
No, because I put
Yeah.
it on
But
and
we
we forgot
said-
to hook it back together. It fell off. Yeah.
Like, we'll just put the
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
hotel and
It's
have a minute for you.
Do you like
supposed to be on today?
Yes.
Huh?
the act?
Just or is he from?
Yes.
Sorry, Bo.
Yeah.
That's
Well-
a special thing.
See it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Right here is her ashes, right?
No, it's the flower.
That's in the flower? Well, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. Sure.
Did you get this?
A while ago,
Oh, it's very
about
nice.
a month ago.
That's nice.
I do.
Up there. It's a-
Western flowers.
Wow. Oh, I think that's pretty darn cool.
See?
Should,
Really nice.
and bless your heart.
I like it.
Pretty.
6 months out of the year was.
Very cool.
What do they call it?
Sad.
So,
Hey,
Yeah.
Ray is Matt on his way.
Yep.
That's nice.
That, we had lived up there in Anchorage with his ex.
Excited. Yeah.
And
I'm excited.
so I had a job offer there. It was either Anchorage or here, and he was already like, he had moved here years prior to that. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll move to Frankfurt. He told me after even just living here and getting used to, I mean, I had time change in Michigan too, but
Yeah.
he's like, I don't know how you would have in Alaska. He said, I just don't. I
Yeah.
don't see it.
You're there.
It's nice in the summertime, huh?
Mhm. Well, even going home, it got up to like 35 mosquitoes.
Oh.
And Ted was telling me about it. It's like mosquitoes. And I thought, oh, you're just pulling my leg.
Yeah.
No.
Do we have public comment?
I was like, okay, he wasn't kidding. And this it wasn't even animals.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
That's a state bird.
yes.
Of course, the locals who kind of exaggerate. They said the mosquitoes are big enough to carry a dog away.
I believe it. We went down to Tri-Cities today. Ted had,
Does that actually work?
I don't, says it's a different kind of paint. It's like, I feel it.
So you're substituting one pain.
I know.
Distracts you.
Yeah. You know what? It gets him to where he thinks he's feeling safe. That's great. And then here's the lady on his side. She's like, oh, Julie, that's good.
No, Matt?
Hmm. That's unusual.
Might be.
Okay, start. All right.
Yeah.
6 p.m. This meeting to order. We'll start with our roll call. Matt Moore seems to be absent right now. Phil Bork,
Here.
Kathleen Harris.
Here.
Bo Lamons.
Here.
James Mathis.
Here.
Valley Millard. Mike Warren.
Here.
This meeting is being recorded. Are there any additions or corrections to the published agenda? There's usually no. No presentations either. And we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Summer, you want to come up? This is
Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Need a motion to approve the consent
So
agenda.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Can I get the motion in second word, please?
Mike Warren?
Kathleen.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, do we need to excuse Matt?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Don't want to
felt
pass.
like he's gonna show up.
So I'll make a motion that we excuse.
I would second that.
On favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And is excused. Moving on quite a bit, moving quickly down there. Find ourselves at section 8. Items for council consideration. First up, we have the annual finance report review committee.
Yeah, so this is for our annual report, and we're just asking that the mayor to review our annual report checkbox every year. The auditors like to see that we have your guys' involvement with that annual report. It also really helps me just double check, to make sure that I can explain it to you guys, then I can explain it to the auditors. Checks all the boxes and then we're good to go. So we're hoping that we could meet either on Tuesday, the 19th or Wednesday, the 20th.
I think we have everyone that wants to volunteer, but I will ask if anyone else wants to.
I'll volunteer because I'll already be here on the 19th for our other meeting.
Yeah, same here. I would volunteer simply because maybe on the third year I'll figure it out.
If there's anyone else who would like to be there, you're more than welcome.
I'm happy to let somebody else do it. I've done it many times, but it's a matter of convenience. We'll be there. So
When is your guys' other meeting?
10 a.m.
After that day. Perfect. Thank you.
Painless. Order of consideration here, parks and transportation impact fees.
So, at the last meeting, I handed out that, methodology for the parks and traffic impact fees. Tonight, we do have Tim Wood, virtually, to go through that process, or to go through that document. So you can understand better than what I can explain on this. So I'm just gonna catch up with him and walk through it.
All right, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for taking the time tonight. Really happy to be able to work on this with your staff, who've been really great and very professional. So, we can just get right into it. I I'll basically say next slide when it's time for next slide. So let's go to that first slide after that introduction slide. And this just kind of gives you an overview of the structure of an impact fee generally. In this case, we're not really looking at that reimbursement fee component. We're mostly focused on the improvement fee component, which, very simply put, is eligible cost divided by units of growth. And that's how we calculate an impact fee in Washington State. So pretty straightforward stuff. And I'll go through all of the different data that went into informing the way that we calculated those fees for Ephrata in this instance. But in the meantime, let's go to that next slide, which just gives you a better sense of how this works in terms of process. And we jump in all points in this cycle, but really the best place to jump in is that master plan system plan component there up at the top of the cycle. That's where the city's planning with another firm, parks planning, transportation planning, water, sewer, et cetera. And getting a sense for what the 20-year, 40-year need of the city is going to be in order to maintain infrastructure access as growth occurs. So as your population and your employment increase. Through those plans, we typically get a project list, just a series of projects that the city's going to need in order to kind of maintain their level of service. And that's usually the basis for that top component of the calculation. That's where we jump in at the impact fee methodology part here. So we've been doing this as a firm at FCS, specifically in Washington State for close to 40 years now. So really, kind of happy to be able to help out with this one. And this is where we talk about the calculation itself, what capital we include, what we don't include, what growth looks like, and then policies, implementation policies, and that kind of thing. So are we going to index the fee to construction cost inflation and that kind of thing so that it keeps pace with the cost of construction, and different, sorts of policy considerations that the council can make as time goes on. For instance, another one being, we'll calculate your maximum defensible fee. You can charge anything below that if you want. You just can't charge above that. And so the next step is that impact fee implementation. That's where you adopt and add it to your fee schedule. You start charging units of development for the impact fees. And then you start to build up that impact fee revenue. It gives you, the ability to pay for capital needs as time goes on, and then you're able to build up additional infrastructure. So it's a pretty straightforward cycle, but it really helps, I think, to kind of help us all understand where we're going to go from here. Any questions about that general structure? Hearing none, we can get into transportation. That's the first fee that we're looking at tonight. So the next little slide gives you a sense for that growth that we're talking about. And in this case, we're talking about two different units of growth. So here we're looking at population and household growth, and this is taken from the comprehensive plan. So we're looking at, roughly 20% growth rate, depending on which metric we're looking at. And that's good for about 1% per year, which is pretty healthy growth, and definitely something that, that level of growth kind of requires action. So that helps us understand the need for transportation services. But the following slide is really the denominator for the growth in a transportation transportation impact fee, and that's trips. So for transportation, your units of growth are just going to be trips. And working with our colleagues at SCJ Alliance, we have this great table of trip growth. So this isn't your existing trips. This is the number of trips we expect to see added to the PM peak hour in Ephrata over the next 20 years. So that's to say you're going to see about 3,386 new trips within the city over the next 20 years from 4 to 6 p.m. on a weekday, which I know is really complicated, but it's the way that we usually charge these things is PM peak hour, because that's when you're usually seeing the most traffic on your streets. In this case, we're going to take out those external trips because we really can't assess those to anyone, since those are trips that start outside the city and end outside the city but go through the city. So not all that many, but still a handful there. So really, our growth basis for this one is 3,224 PM peak hour trips for vehicles. So that's your denominator component of the calculation. And the numerator is made up of the next slide, which is the project list. So again, SCJ helped the city sort of pick out these projects and cost estimate those things. So what we're looking at here is your 20-year transportation capital needs that we'll use as the basis for the cost for the impact fee. As you can see here, this table's got several columns. So we'll start leftmost, which is the project title. So that should give you an idea of about where and about what the project will be. The next column is the cost estimate. So that's the total cost for that project in 2026 dollars. Percent to be funded locally. So there were a couple projects in there, as you can see, the first and third projects where we expect to see some outside funding, and that gets deducted out of the basis. And then we apply growth share here, and that's just basically the quantity of the new trips. The quantity of the trips on these facilities that will be made up of new residents or new employees inside the city of Ephrata. So 20.25% of these projects can be included in the transportation impact fee. So using those two deductions, your percent to be locally funded and then the growth share component, we've got the TIF eligible costs over there on the right. And so in total, you're looking at a cost basis of about $6.8 million for the transportation impact fee. We'll go to the next slide, and we can see this is how we kind of take all of those data components and make them into an intelligible fee. So we'll take a look at that left table there, where we've got the total project cost of about 33.8 million. We multiply that by the average eligibility. So that's the average eligibility when we consider the gross share and also the portions that are going to be funded from outside city sources, resulting in that net allocable growth cost of $6.7 or $6.8 million. And then we divide that by the number of net new trip ends that will be in the city, that'll start or end in the city of 3,224. And so you've got a PM peak hour rate of $2,095. So that then is applied to trip generation rates that are provided by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and we'll put this all in a table for you guys so that there's no guesswork, or you have to go and index to that at any point. And as you can see there on the right, we've got your TIF, and we've also juxtaposed it with a couple of other jurisdictions that are sort of nearby for a single family detached. So you can see here that number, the 2,095, doesn't quite line up with that 1,969. It's because a single family detached house generates just under 1 PM peak hour trip per day. So you're getting a slightly lower rate there, but that's because of the trip generation. And so that then would also be applied to any other sort of land use. So a warehouse or a coffee shop or fast food establishment, and each of those different land use types has a particular trip generation rate based on either the number of units that it's adding, if it's residential. So multifamily, for instance, would be a number of units component, and then also for commercial enterprises, you've got per 1,000 square feet trip generation rates. So and that again, that's a table that's available, I think, in the methodology report that you've got available to you. Any questions about the transportation impact fee? And we can come back and circle back and chat about this towards the end as well. We'll quickly move on to the parks impact fee, which is the other component of the analysis that we did. And the following slide is just a repetition of that growth slide from prior, where we're looking at population and household growth rates. So nothing new here, but this is the whole thing for parks. So there is no trip equivalent with respect to parks. So this is going to be our basis for growth and how we're going to measure growth, because for parks, there's not much demand from commercial. So it's pretty much all charged to residential. The following slide shows the current park inventory, and this is relevant because eligibility for parks projects is determined based on existing level of service. So that's usually expressed in a number of units per 1,000 residents. So in this case, we've got 46.8 acres of parkland and then 3.4 miles of trails inside of the city. So those are the two kind of categories of parks that we're looking at, trails and then also parkland. The following slide shows you the project list. And so here, this is again provided by, I think, SCJ. And this is your number of projects, which, you got quite a few projects for parks here. And we're looking at total cost of about 8.1 million here. And you can see that on that second from the left column. I'm looking over at my screen. That's why I'm gesturing this way. Sorry. And then in this case, we've got quite a bit more outside funding, or I should say inside funding, but non-impact fee funding. And discussing with staff, it sounds like you're dedicating quite a bit of your real estate excise tax funds to parks capital. So that's going to generate about $1.4 million for that list. So that's deducted out of the total project cost, with a remainder to be funded of about 6.7 million. And here, I don't have it in one of these columns, but we're adding a lot of parkland. And a lot of this is parkland acquisition. We're going to add 464 acres of parkland and then a number of trail miles as well. So it's a pretty ambitious list, but that cost is pretty reasonable relative to any of the other clients that we've worked for recently. So that's the good news. In the next slide, we're going to talk about a subject that's called level of service. And so this will help determine the eligibility for each of these projects. And I'll walk you through this because this table confuses me and I'm in it all the time. The way we measure level of service, there's really 4 ways to measure it, which is by category. So you see that on the top there, community park, facilities, and then trails, and then by unit of measurement. So we've got just acres of parkland and then trails. So kind of breaking it down into those kind of more basic components. And what we're looking at here is the current level of service. So that's the level of service that you currently provide today. And starting in the white portions of this table with the leftmost column, that's your 2022 quantity based on that existing parks list right now. So 42.5 acres of community park, 4.3 acres of facilities, and 3.4 miles of trails. That implies the next column over, which is the units per 1,000 residents. So here on category, you've got just under 5 acres per 1,000 residents of community park. You've got about half an acre per 1,000 residents of facilities, and about 0.4 of a mile of trail per 1,000 residents. And there on the rightmost column, you're seeing the change in quantity. So that's the number of added units based on the project list that we've got. So you can see we're adding a ton of parkland here. We're adding more than 450 acres of parkland. Meanwhile, with facilities, you're adding 6 acres and you're adding 3.68 miles of trails. And that then leads to this kind of current level of service. So we're seeing there on the next column to the right, additional needed to maintain level of service. So this is based on that population and household formation growth and your existing level of service, you're seeing this number. So based on your existing level of service, you need to add about 10.8 acres of new parkland. You need to add about 1.1 acres of new facilities and about 0.9 miles of new trails. So and juxtapose those two numbers, the additional needed to maintain LOS and the change in quantity, you can see that that list is much more ambitious than would need to be accommodated based on existing level of service. So you see your eligibility percentage there on the right is very low for community parks. It's 2.38% of, and that means that 2.38% of the costs of those parks are going to be PIF eligible, park impact fee eligible. Facilities 18.1, and for trails 23.9, basically. Same approach with unit of measurement, only we're collapsing acres of community parks and acres of facilities. So you can see on the right there for acres of community park and facilities, it's slightly higher than it is for community parks, and the same for trails, which makes sense because we're not able to collapse that in any way. Going to the next slide also shows a similar table, but this is called the future level of service, and this takes a look at the future level of service that will be provided when these parks are completed. So again, we'll just look at the by category here, and we'll go through that. And hopefully that will illustrate enough. So again, we're repeating that 2022 quantity of community parks, facilities, and trails, and units per 1,000 residents, same level of service there, and same change in quantity. So the first three columns here, they're basically the same thing. But this time we're looking at the number of acres per 1,000 residents that would exist at the end of this project list. So instead of it being 4.93 acres of community park, we're looking at basically 46 acres of community park by the end of the project list in 2044. Likewise with facilities land, we're bumping that up significantly from 0.5 to 0.96. And then trails, we're going from 0.39 to 0.65. So it's much higher. The trick with this is that we're not allowed to count those acres that would cure this deficit that exists. So we're looking at still a pretty outsized project list that we won't be able to fit all of those costs into the kind of eligible quantity. But you can see that our numbers for eligibility are much higher here. So we're saying 22.15% of community parks are eligible, 34.68% of the facilities are eligible, and just under 40% of trails are eligible. So much higher number here. We like to see that. The next slide gives it a bit more shape. That way you kind of get a sense for what that means, what these numbers mean for Ephrata. So you can see here we've got the cost components on the leftmost column. So same thing here, only again, we're just collapsing community parks and facilities in the by unit of measure category. And then we've got the 4 different approaches to level of service and the kind of the implied eligible costs there on the following 2 boxes in this table. And you can see basically the bottom line, the most important numbers here are those bolded numbers at the bottom. That's the quantity of dollars from that project list that are eligible to be included in the project in the parks impact fee. And so you can see with current level of service, we're not even breaking $1 million in either approach in terms of eligible costs. The future level of service approach gives us a lot more to work with. So we've got just under 2 million of eligible costs in the future level of service by category, and 1.65 million of eligible costs in the by unit of measure. So that's probably what we would recommend you go with, so that you can actually collect an amount that's worth collecting. That next slide breaks that down into what the park impact fee would be. So we're looking there, your total project cost, and this is again kind of divided out by those 4 level of service approaches. So you've got at the top of those tables your total cost basis in each approach, your residential growth, which is the same across, and then you've got your PIF per new resident. So that ranges from $169 to $913 per resident. And then the implied impact fee per single family detached dwelling, which ranges from $450 per single family detached to just under $2,500 per single family detached. And you can see again there in that table at the bottom, there's your impact fee, the the top one, the maximum defensible impact fee per single family detached compared to your neighboring jurisdictions there that also charge a PIF. I know I'm hitting you with a lot, so are there any questions at this point?
Tim, this is Ray, the city administrator.
Hi, Ray.
Hey, do your future numbers account for inflationary measures?
Yeah, so that's a good question. What we typically recommend, because obviously we don't know what inflation is going to look like as time goes on, but the best course of action and one of the very top kind of implementation actions that we recommend cities take at all times is indexing these fees to construction cost index, so that way, as the years go on, the city adjusts the fee based on what the construction cost index is. And I'm sure that your folks work with that metric all the time, but it's a must, because otherwise, obviously, a fee like this, give it 10 years, it's not going to buy half of what it did, when it was implemented. So that's the way that we get around that.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay. So the final set of slides here that we're going to look at regards scaling by square footage for single family homes. So new requirement from the state is that your impact fees need to be scaled based on home size, so that way, as people build bigger houses, those houses are typically charged more because they usually hold more people. And we've done the math on where that makes sense and where it doesn't. And basically in Washington, we see that there's a correlation between house size and the number of people inside of the house, thus kind of like creating more demand, all the way up until about, we'd say 3,500 square feet of house. So the following slide shows what that means for these impact fees that we've calculated for you. And so we're taking those kind of the maximum defensible impact fees there, and using average occupancy per dwelling unit, which in Ephrata is 2.67 people per single family detached. Your average square footage per dwelling unit of, roughly 1,700 square feet. And then we kind of divide that impact fee by those two metrics. So that's the impact fee per occupant there for each of those, and then the impact fee per square foot of house based on that impact fee divided by the average square footage of a home. And then we apply some sort of sideboards where we've got a minimum impact fee where, there's really not going to be homes that are below that 623 square feet. And then we get up to the maximum proportionate impact fee per square foot. So again, where that correlation between size and population inside of the home drops off is 35.58. So you can see that there's a big range there that this creates. And the idea from the state is, this incentivizes builders to build smaller and build more. And whether or not that's true is not really for me to quibble with, but that's the requirement that we have now in Washington. So typically what we do when we calculate these is we give you